Our next presenters are Michelle Pletch and Amber Rodbell. They're both on our custom team here at ELB Learning and have many years of experience designing innovative learning solutions. Wayne, no, the next conversation starter is not about beverages. So Michelle and Amber are going to show us how to incorporate different AI tools into our workflows. So welcome to the ELBX Online stage. I will let you two take it away.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everybody. So great to be here. Excited to tell you a little bit about storyboarding, instructional design, and how we can incorporate AI into that process, and talk a lot about why it's good to incorporate it, how, and some pitfalls to it as well. So super excited to kind of dive into that today. And I'll go really quick on introduction. Thank you, Stephanie. I am Michelle Pletch. I'm the Learning Experience Design Manager here at ELB. And just upfront, I am not an AI expert. I am not someone that has, been working in the AI field for lots of years. What I am is an instructional designer that has decided to find out how AI can assist me in doing my job better, and have talked to lots of people and done a little research on my own, and kind of have compiled that information along with Amber to be able to pass that along to you. So excited to tell you where we think AI can be incorporated into our courses and into our design, and just kind of learn along with all of you. So it's really great to be here. Amber?
All right, and I'm Amber Rodbell. I'm the Director of Development here at ELB Learning, and we have really been exploring some of the tools available to help with storyboarding and development with AI integration, and we're really excited to kind of share what we've learned with you, and I'm going to pass it back to Michelle, and we're going to get started.
Yeah. All right, so in this presentation today, we're just going, like I said, going to explore some ways that AI can be incorporated into our storyboarding process, and we'll kind of touch on what that is. But before we get into there, let's just kind of talk generally about what is artificial intelligence. We've all kind of been hearing the name for a long time, kind of have all these different ideas of it, from sci-fi movies to all these different things, but just kind of down to its just basics. It's really just the development of intelligent machines that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. So it's doing things that we would, like having conversations or understanding speech, that we kind of attribute only to humans being able to do that. And that would have seemed like total magic and witchcraft if you had seen it, 50 years ago. It would have seemed totally crazy. But now we've kind of gotten used to it. Most of us use AI in some form pretty much every day. If you use Alexa or Siri, those are kind of, these are AI tools that can respond to our voice commands. And when they do that, they are giving us feedback and we're giving it feedback. It's converting your text into, or your speech into, some form of meaning and relevant information. So the more you use AI, not only do the more you get used to it, but the more those tools are able to actually do for you. That's the one kind of cool thing about AI. That's another thing that's, kind of, we thought only humans could do this, is that it's constantly learning and growing and evolving. So even what we talk about as, different potentialities as far as, what you can do for, instructional design here, it's going to change a year from now. We could have a whole different presentation on, the possibilities and the capabilities of AI and how we should or shouldn't use it. So just at its basics, that's kind of what AI is. And we're just going to explore it kind of in the context of storyboarding and instructional design. All right. So this is one that we've probably all heard. I think we've heard it about pretty much every industry at this point, customer service, or, even production and that sort of thing. Will AI replace instructional designers? like I mentioned before, we've all seen those sci-fi movies where the robots have taken over the world and the humans either don't exist or are fighting the robots or doing something, right? So I can understand, or everyone understands, why there's this little bit of a hesitation. Like, how much do we want to embrace this? Is this really going to be a good tool for us, or are we kind of putting ourselves out of business? Well, totally understandable. But really, if we think about the way AI can be used, and the tools, what they are and where they're going, AI is not going to be replacing us as designers. It's just another tool in our toolbox to enhance the capabilities that we have. We can leverage AI to do lots and lots of different things. If we think about the process that we go through, that I'll kind of look at in a little more detail later, we can leverage it to streamline our work, automate repetitive tasks, and then we can focus on the more creative, fun, aspects of the job. So rather than getting tied up in, the little tedious kind of details that we all have to go through in order to understand content and, get to a point where we could really storyboard and develop, we can kind of we can use AI to help us do those parts of the projects. And then, like I said, focus on kind of the more fun stuff. AI can help us with the data analysis, even the content creation, learner analytics, and then allowing us to make decisions and design kind of towards those things. In general, and not in general, the most important part of this is that no matter how much we use the AI to guide us in our process, it's never going to replace that human touch. We are the ones that know our learners. We are the ones that know our clients. We are the ones that are trying to imagine that learner on the other side of the screen and the experience that they are going to have. So AI can spit out a bunch of stuff for us, but it's then our job to take that and create an experience around it, that the learners will enjoy and is accurate. AI is not 100% accurate. So that human touch is crucial in designing these engaging learner experiences, to consider the motivations of our learners, the different aspects of our learners' lives as far as, who are they? And we incorporate that into our courses. So we don't need to see AI as a threat or competition, but just as an opportunity for us to do things better and more efficiently. Instructional design has been changing and evolving, which is another thing we'll kind of talk about here in a minute. And we have to change and adapt to that landscape in order to keep up and, make our courses the best they can be. So I keep kind of using learning experience and instructional design kind of interchangeably. They definitely have overlaps, but they're not exactly the same thing. And this is one of those changes that I was kind of referring to a minute ago when we're saying, okay, what is it that we do every day? And what is it that we as instructional designers do in order to create, these courses, trainings, whatever it is? We always have to, if you look on the left side, analyze the needs. We're going to design strategies, create material, and come up with an assessment or something to measure an outcome, right? It's kind of straightforward. That's what we've always done. And while we're still doing those things, what most of us have realized over the years is that we need to take the learner experience into account with everything we do. So when we're going into content, instead of just saying, okay, here's the outline and the way that I'm going to approach it, we start to take a wider view and focus on the experience of the person learning, the person on the other side of that screen that we may or may not ever meet. But we try to put ourselves in their shoes. And then we use things that we think would, make the experience better for us. So that could be things like interactive media, storytelling, or gamification, anything that could keep the learner kind of motivated, engaged, involved. AI is just another tool, as I mentioned, that can then help us do that. It can help us personalize those learning experiences for each individual. It can collect feedback and analyze data in real time. So instead of it just being this straight linear process where everyone goes from point A to point B, we can now adapt the learning. We can find out about the learner in the process of them learning, and then be able to adapt the rest of the course, the path they go down, to that person. So it's an exciting time to be a learning experience designer, because we are just getting so much more in our toolbox as far as what we can do and how we can do it. So super, super exciting time. Stephanie, do we have any questions yet, or are we still kind of rolling?
We are doing great right now. No questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So before I turn it over to Amber for some fun demos, I want to talk about, when we talk about storyboarding and instructional design, what are the different parts of the process that we are kind of actually thinking that AI could help us with? And the short answer is most of them. There's a lot of different parts of the process where AI could be a tool that we use. So I have some up here on the screen. We've got the research and the gap closure, language and grammar checks, summaries, assessments, and all sorts of other things that go into our process. So when we first, start working on a course or a training, and we're sitting here like, okay, what do I want to present? Or we have this mountain of information and don't have any clue where to start, So instead of just regular old get the book out in your highlighter and go through, AI is a way to kind of say, okay, here's this chunk of information. I just need a quick high-level overview of what this is before I kind of get digging down into, how this course can be presented. That's something that AI is really great at. But it's not perfect. So once we get, these different tools, these things back from it, either assessments or summaries or all of these different things, it's then up to us to come in behind and fix it, make sure it's accurate, take our learners into consideration, and just make it into a complete learning experience. So AI opens up a world of possibilities that were not previously available. But as I keep going back to, it's only the start of that process, because we as the designers have to come in and just really polish it and make sure it's completely accurate, and do the work after we've gotten ourselves a little bit of a head start. So we can look at some of those ways that we will get that head start just now. Go ahead, Amber.
All right. I think kind of one of my first questions for everybody is, maybe you can give me a thumbs up or some sort of notification. Who has already been testing out and trying to use some of the tools out there available? All right. It looks like there are lots of people. Lots of people have been diving in. That's so great. I think that really shows that in the industry, this is something that we really need to be diving into, looking into, seeing how it's going to work in our jobs and what we're doing to really help us. So let's go on here. I know that probably the big outlier here is ChatGPT. That's kind of the buzzword in the industry, the main AI tool that everybody wants to talk about, and it is really great. So we're going to start with, let's say we get our client content, okay? We open up ChatGPT, and we're going to hope this plays for us here. All right, we open up ChatGPT, and I know that as you all have been playing around, you've probably watched tons of webinars out there on what's the best way to create a prompt, what's the, best words to use and the best examples. And there's lists and lists out there for you. But in here, I took the client's content and I said, okay, can you create me the top learning objectives? And this was for an hour-long course. And I mean, it spits out 10 learning objectives right there. And then I'm going to try to pause here. Okay. And so as we see, like, okay, we know that we're going to have to look at those learning objectives. We're going to have to make sure they actually align with what our clients' objectives are for the course. And so, but it streamlines those. It takes this hour-long bit of content and says, okay, help me like get a head start here. Let me start to dive into and chunk this content. And then we see what the client's needs are, and we're able to use those to really help us create those learning objectives. Then some fun things that ChatGPT can do to take it a little bit further, you can say, hey, now, all right, with my content, maybe I want to create the quiz questions. Tell me, what quiz questions I should be using. And then you can say, oh, well, I only need 5. So change it and say, okay, create 5 quiz questions or 10 quiz questions. And they pop out here. And they, again, may or may not be the questions you end up using, but they give you really a head start on those questions. They allow you to start thinking, oh, that's a good part to really focus in on. I want to be thinking about that. Or, your client, a lot of clients will write your quiz questions that they really want. And so you can then say, oh, this is what they're saying. These are some of the questions that are coming over here. Maybe there's better wording from ChatGPT. Maybe there is a way that, oh, this is a really good question. I might ask the client if we want to use this and touch on this as well. So it's a great way to get your quiz questions really quickly. Something that, could have taken an ID, an hour or two before to write some quiz questions, in a few seconds, there you go. You have a head start. So that definitely makes this a great tool to really streamline that process. Another thing is we all know that our clients will tell us, hey, we have different education levels with our different end users and learners. And so we can say, okay, we'll make these college level or make these for high school students or whatever your learners baseline is, you can go ahead and do that right here. And it's kind of fun to watch. Like I was trying lots of different learner levels and to see the way they change it up. Another fun thing with ChatGPT is that maybe you're having a day where you're like, oh, I just can't think of something creative, like a creative interaction for this content. You can type in here, create me a e-learning interaction that talks about this content. And it can spit out 10 different ways. Maybe you can do a drag and drop, and maybe you can do, a scenario. Oh, that sparked something, a scenario, great idea. Can you write me a scenario about this? And it spits out a scenario. So that's really great because it's, again, not always 100%, but it gets you thinking. It helps you really bridge that gap and say, okay, now I have a scenario. Now, some other prompts you can say is, oh, I want to tell this scenario more as a story or something that would take place in a warehouse setting. And ChatGPT will spit out those kind of story elements and change the tone for you. So that's something else that's really nice that it can help you do. So let's see here. Let's continue to play. Oh, here, sorry. I guess I went ahead. Here's the creating interaction prompt. And so this will show you a good example. What's really neat about this prompt is you'll see a little tagline at the end when you do this, and it says things like, this is best used in articulate storyline or rise or lectora, and it tells you, what tools and authoring tools that you can do these types of scenarios. So that's kind of fun as well. So that these scenarios you can definitely turn into actual e-learning. Now, as I was going through, I was like, well, we have the question out there. How accurate is some of this information? If we're using our clients' content, that's a good starting point versus search the web for anything for me, which gets a little tricky and, has its own ramifications. But when you have your clients' content and you put it in there, you can then say, okay, well, I have this information. Let me take a bit of that information and let me go ahead and use another AI tool to really help me. And so what I did is I took a chunk out of what we were just doing and I went ahead and said, okay, now I'm going to use Grammarly to help me out. So I copy and pasted some of that information in here and I said, okay, how do we do? How did ChatGPT do? Did it have any errors? Did it have any kind of issues? And you'll see that it has like an 81% score. So this is where, the human touch definitely comes in again. We're going to have to rewrite. We're going to have to, think about, read through it and say, oh, okay, is that the tone I really want to convey? Is that really what our client wants to be saying? And so that's when the human touch comes in, allows you to rewrite some things and work on that. But again, using Grammarly as a tool, it can identify some of those grammar issues up front for you. It can identify, when tone usage is wrong. So that's super helpful to use again as another tool on top of ChatGPT. Now we're going to go on to one more tool that I really like, and that is WordTune. So we all have those days where we're like, I just can't figure out how I want to say this. And I just, I know what I want to say, but I'm reading it and it's just not sounding right. So you can go ahead and you can put that into WordTune and you can say, okay, please rewrite this. And you will get, 6 to 10 different ways that you could reword something that could convey the same message, but sound a little bit better. And sometimes, we all have those days when we need those moments of, oh, I just feel like I could say this better. And so this is another way that you can use it as a tool to really help you with rewrites and things like that. All right, now I do see some Q&A. Stephanie, do we want to hold those for the end or do we want to touch on any of those right now?
Let's see. What are your thoughts on the using AI and intellectual property, like feeding the client's information into ChatGPT?
Yes, so that is definitely a question, and we are going to talk a little bit more about that, but that is a great thing to point out. I think that depending on the client, those are some questions you're going to have to ask yourself. Some clients' information is proprietary and you shouldn't be doing that. However, there are different AI integrations that aren't going out to the web. They're on, your own servers so that you can basically teach your own AI to help you in ID. And so it wouldn't be actually putting it anywhere over the web. So that is an opportunity that I think a lot of companies are really looking into for the future.
Okay, that's a great answer. And then we'll do one more question. Do you worry about students using AI to get the answers?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, we know that this is going to happen. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do about that. That's a different conversation. But I can tell you, I have a 19-year-old, and he certainly has tried that to write a paper before. So I do think that that is going to be something that is a real issue in the future that they're definitely going to have to dive into and, figure out the ramifications in an education setting.
Yeah. And I can tell you personally, I didn't go into my background, but prior to being in instructional design, I was a middle school teacher and I had some very tech savvy students. And I 100% believe that if this was around, even 3 years ago, I don't know how long it's been around, but they didn't know about it 3 years ago. I would have been really struggling with, whether or not somebody really wrote this paper or what it sounded like. On the teacher aspect, you kind of know your students. So if it sounds college level and they're 11, it's probably not their writing. But, for a company that does have college level, associates, that's going to be quite tricky. I can't remember exactly what it is, but there were some PhD, like doctoral researchers or something that wrote their whole research paper using AI basically to see if somebody noticed. And I don't think anybody did. So then they came out afterwards and were like, this was actually AI, just to kind of show and demonstrate what you're saying is we have to really now start paying attention to, are students really learning? If it's a writing prompt, does it sound like them? Is it them? And with big companies, that's going to be a challenge. So interesting kind of thought process. Yeah, and just not quite sure where you go from there, but it's one of those things like just how we're having to adapt, the instructors are going to have to learn to adapt too. So someone finds the answer to that you can easily spot it, let me know for sure.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to go down here and let's see, we're going to dive in a little bit to kind of the versus the content side, but maybe some of the imagery side of your course. And I don't know how many people on the call, who is familiar on the call, if you want to give me a thumbs up, is familiar with CVR. Anybody familiar with our scenario VR tool? Okay, we got a couple people. So it's pretty cool. It's a very cool tool. I want to see if I can show you here in real time.
Okay. While Amber's doing this, one of the coolest things about this is, I don't know about you, when I'm designing courses, I spend so much time looking for imagery. It would be such a cool way to kind of generate those hard to find images, which is what Amber is going to kind of show you here in a second.
Oh, if my browser would like to cooperate. I don't know. Here, one second.
No problem. Especially when you have some of those clients with very special, subject matters that we're kind of looking at here. It can become very difficult. I know there's been times where I've spent hours looking for imagery, and, when I can't find it, it gets very frustrating. And, we can ask the client, but if they don't have it, then, what do we do from there? So definitely can be a little bit tricky.
Okay, sorry about that. It wanted to prompt me here. Yeah. All right, I'm going to pop up. It's really kind of interesting. This is our CVR AI wizard, and it's built right into the tool. And in just, like you're looking at your course, and sometimes if the client didn't provide you images, you're like, where do I even start? And so you can say, okay, I need a boiler room with pipes. Like, this is super simple, like just something like very basic. And we say, okay, let's see what the AI wizard from an imagery standpoint can come up with. And it's really amazing to see, because I've tried this with like, show me a background of an office in New York, and show me a background of a warehouse that I can use in my course. And you'll see that it'll come up and give you and generate this background for you. And maybe it's not exactly what you were looking for, but maybe it sparks something that helps you say, oh, okay, that's great. And I know that this in particular is for a 360 usage. However, you can utilize 360 images in lots of authoring tools now. And you can also take screenshots of these images so that you can use them as a, straight flat image as well. So it's kind of fun to see how we incorporated it in CVR to really pop out some like great images with very little prompting. Like, that was not a good prompt. So, like when you really get detailed, you can go from realistic to, illustrative or whatever you want. And it really pops that up. And from an illustration standpoint, illustrations sometimes are really difficult. And those clients who want those illustrations, it's super helpful.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back into the presentation. And I think we're going to go over here to the next slide, and then we'll dive back into the other demo we were going to do if we have a moment.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so all of those tools, maybe you've used all of them, maybe you've some of them, maybe you've used none of them, but they're all just really great starting points for you when you are trying to build a course. Just giving you that leg up, that 10-second head start, into your process. But as we mentioned, it's not perfect, right? It is not one thing that's just, oh, here it is, and now our jobs are super simple. There's all sorts of stuff that kind of comes along with that. So some of the challenges that we have, one is that it relies on data, right? Usually web data or something that is kind of available out there. And so acquiring the right data sometimes takes a little bit of maneuvering, the exact right prompt, or depending on if, like Amber mentioned, the data is proprietary, it's very specialized to the client. AI is not going to have that. So we, as the humans behind the screen, must ensure the quality and reliability of the data that comes to us. We can't just take it at face value and say, okay, well, ChatGPT said X, so therefore this is the right question, this is the right answer. No, we have to come behind and make sure that everything that's coming out is accurate. Usually if you're working with a client, they're coming to you expecting a certain tone of voice, a certain point of view, a certain overall message, overarching message. Maybe it's, a HIPAA course, but they want this overarching message of like taking care of their people. So AI is not going to know how to integrate that. So again, whatever we kind of start off with, we have to come in behind and make sure the company's own policies and procedures are, communicated properly, the tone is communicated properly, and, one's never going to be exactly the same. So we've got to make sure that, for everything that we're getting out, we're still putting as much as ourselves and our knowledge and expertise back into it. And then when it comes to adaptability and the customization, like we said, effective instructional design or learning experience design means really taking into account our learners' needs. Yes, we could go in and say, please write this as a college level, set of questions, but that doesn't take into account the nuances of individuals that you might have learned, from your clients, their skill levels, their styles, their learning styles, all of these different things that the AI just can't read or represent. So when building these courses, we need the humans, right, that can work with the subject matter experts and the clients and just really get down into the heart of the content rather than just kind of that surface labeled data that the AI is pulling out. So just coming back around to, we've got to have that human touch on every aspect of it. And then someone had that great question earlier that Amber kind of gave you the high level on earlier. There are ethical considerations behind, using using AI in instructional design, with privacy and security being one of the rules. And one of the biggest things that we have to make sure that we, are staying in line with. When you're working with a client, often the information is, not publicly available. It's their internal, private information, meaning ChatGPT is not going to have access to that information. So it's not something we can go in and then specifically ask them for help with. And on the flip side of that, if it's not publicly available information, it's not information we should go and put out into the public forum. So those are different things. So maybe I have this PowerPoint, but I then can't use it and input it into any of these AI tools. I can do a general search for the topic, but as far as the specifics that we were given, we can't just throw that into ChatGPT or any of these open, other open source AIs, because it would be a violation of the confidentiality agreement or other sort of privacy agreement that you have. So those are two things to just always keep in mind. As easy as it seems to be able to just take content and throw it in somewhere and just, pump out an assessment, that might not be the right thing to do. We might have to think of other ways to allow AI to support us without directly using client content. So super, whoever thought of that, and glad people were thinking of it, because I know it's one of those with all the excitement around AI and all the possibilities, a lot of times we're not thinking about, the way the information is going to be used on the back end. Another ethical consideration there, like I have there, is bias. So AI, if you've ever kind of looked into it, it's can kind of perpetuate bias based on certain algorithms and things that are set up. So it's one of those that we have to be really careful to audit the outputs that we receive. The system doesn't completely understand, the social constructs around, the people that you're referring to, the cultural or historical context. They're just spitting out data as they think it relates, from what they have found online. But we've got to be very careful about that because it doesn't take into consideration the backgrounds and experiences that people are bringing to the table. So just another kind of reason that we have to kind of go look through it and say, does this sound right? Are there any phrases in here that maybe we know we shouldn't really be using? Or some of the examples, not ones that a large portion of our audience will understand. I remember very specifically, there was this question that was like big. It was a big argument about whether or not this question was fair to people with a lower socioeconomic status, because it was about how does snow feel when you're rolling around in it or something. But the question was being given to kids in Miami, and they were like, never seen snow, right? So not only is it, this whole region kind of is at a disadvantage, but, lower socioeconomic students probably haven't traveled somewhere where there's snow, so we've got to kind of look and see when these questions are being spit out, do they work with this content and with the audience? So super important just to keep that, keep all of that in mind. And then once we get past those ethical considerations, which always need to kind of be at the back of our mind or the front of our mind, really, we also can now think of, now we've built the course, we've, kind of come up, maybe we're doing backwards design. So we got our assessments done, we've got our learning objectives done. We know the information that we want to convey, okay, but how do we want to do that? So at that point, the really cool next step for AI is, adapting to our learners. Traditional courses just go from the intro to 1, 2, 3, 4 conclusion assessment, right? Everybody takes the same path, no matter if they already know the information, need to know the information, need more support. And it's just this linear thing. But with AI, we can actually monitor and find things out along the way about our learner to really customize their learning experiences. We can take them down these different paths to where they really need to be. Some ways that we can do that, like it mentions here, is we've got assessment, right? The very first thing we got to do is find out about our learners, right? We've all kind of taken these, pre-test and done different things, or even fun ones online where you take these, quizzes and it tells you what cartoon character you are, whatever it is. But we can kind of do that same model within AI. So we have this assessment that allows us to understand the learner's current knowledge, skills, and learning style. And then we design our course so that based on those results, based on what they've told us, they have this personalized learning paths that will take advantage of their strengths, support their weaknesses, and their preferences. And we customize the content along the way just to match their needs. It's iterative because, it could be you just, like a lot of times it's you answer this, so then you go down this path, and you answered this, so you go down this path. But really there's a way to kind of, make it so we start down this path, but then we've got a little check here. And if they're not doing well, then maybe we loop them back around. So it just really provides a lot more opportunity to really support the learners in what they need, just having them more engaged, that personalized experience. And therefore our outcomes will be optimized because the learner got what they needed in a way that they liked it. And it's a more efficient use of everybody's time. It's a more efficient use of the learner's time. The companies that, are wanting these learners to take this, I'm sure they'll be happy that the learner is spending less time on these, but still getting the information. So outside of all the pre-work and storyboarding that we do, as we're storyboarding, we can then start to think, Amber, you can go to the next one. We can then start to think of these paths that learners can go down. This is one of those, I'm sure you've seen one of those kind of yes/no charts where you start with a question, and if you say yes, then you go one path, and if you say no, then you go down the other. That could be, the answer question one way, maybe like for vacation, are you an indoor person or outdoor person? And so, okay, if you're indoor, you're going to go down path 2. And then we ask you another question. Is your favorite summer or winter? And then so depending on your answer for that one, then you go down a different path. we can apply that same idea to our courses as we're building them out. Takes a little more work on our part, but in the end, the outcomes of the learners are going to be so great that, it's really going to be worth it to see it. And as we do this more and more, the better we will get at it. So this is just, that last, I think, probably not last, but right now, last piece of the puzzle that we can add in for the learners, kind of help us in the front end to design the courses, and then use AI to help the learner get to where they need to be in a way that, they will actually enjoy the experience, engage in their learning. So that adaptive learning experience is just something that we can just start looking at how to incorporate, and more tools are kind of allowing for this kind of, learning process to happen. So it's an exciting time for us and the learners.
Michelle, I just wanted to kind of give them a quick example of how maybe they could put that into practice. And it could be as simple as a pre-survey to your learners, asking the questions that directly parallel with the courses that you have in mind. And when you get all of that feedback, you're going to be able to put that feedback into an AI tool, and it's going to be able to pinpoint the direct needs and give you percentages of this many learners said they're dealing with this issue, and this many learners need more information about that. And then to expound on what Michelle said, you'll be able to create those courses that are directly directed to their needs. And that's really when you're going to see huge benefits of how, hey, look what AI is allowing us to be able to do.
Absolutely.
All right. I think if there's any more questions, Stephanie, we can go ahead and answer some of those and open it up for that.
All right. Yeah. So there's been lots of great activity in the chat, people recommending different AI engines and things similar to ChatGPT. We did have a question earlier when you were showing the ChatGPT and putting in getting the learning objectives and stuff. Could you use that to help you plan branching scenarios, do you think?
Yes, actually, I've done that before as well. And you can put in, and there are, like I said, there's slews of help and different YouTube videos on prompts for this if you look it up, but you can literally say, create a branching scenario on this topic with this content and give me ideas how I can branch it. And it'll write it all out for you. And if you need to take it, if you're a very visual learner and you need to take it a step further, you can say, okay, now can you put that in a table for me so I can see the differences? And it will put it in a constraint of a table so you can actually see the paths as well.
Oh, that's really cool.
I think one of the big things, and I'm still definitely, like I said at the beginning, still learning. I think one of the big things is just learning how to talk to it. You can I find that I probably ask 10 questions at least for everything. I'll ask for something and then I'm like, okay, that's good, but can you also do this? And then can you also do this now? Before I get to really what I'm really looking for. So it takes a little bit of practice.
Yeah, definitely. We did have some comments earlier from people. So back to the concern about students using AI to cheat. There are tools that some school systems are using to detect AI writing. So that's an option. That's a strategy to prevent that. All right. If there are any more questions, we'll give it one more minute for you to get your typing fingers ready and put those into the chat or the Q&A. But otherwise, it looks like we have covered everything. Michelle, Amber, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been great. They are both on LinkedIn if anyone wants to connect with Michelle or Amber to talk about this stuff in more detail or other instructional design topics. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for everybody that came and asked questions and just listened and got something out of it today. It was great being here. Thank you.
Oh, here's one last question. Is there a way to find out the source of the information that the AI is giving you? I believe John earlier said you can ask ChatGPT to provide its sources.
Yeah.
You can do a follow-up question in there.
You can, for sure. And a lot of the other tools as well.
All right. Great. Well, thank you both.
Thank you, everybody.